All right, well, I'm Edd Sorenson. I own Cave Adventures. I'm a cave diving instructor. I'm a cave diving instructor trainer and an instructor trainer examiner. So I teach anywhere from diving cavern all the way up to CCR instructor training. Started cave diving about 30 years ago. Moved here from Portland, Oregon in 2003. Started Cave Adventures just because there was no place to get fills. And then, being a body recovery diver, one of the original founding divers from 1998. On training, they said it's called the International Underwater Cave Rescue and Recovery Team, but there are no cave rescues. They're all body recoveries by the time we're called. And until 2012, there only been 4. And then I did 4 in 1 year, then 1 the next year, and then I'll say 1 in, I don't remember what year that was, 2017, I think. So that weekend, there was like 3 or 4 instructors in town all teaching at Jackson Blue.
When was this?
2012. So, Bill Dunn was there teaching a class. He was the training director for the NSS CDS at the time. He was getting ready to start a cave class. Jeff Laughlin was here teaching a cave class. I was down there, and I think I was getting ready to start I think it was an intro class. And one of the instructors was from Missouri, and he was the first one at the park. And he was teaching an apprentice class, and he had asked, he wasn't very familiar with the cave, so he had asked another instructor, Jeff, where's a good jump to take them where I don't have to swim too far because the flow is up. And so Jeff told him about the horseshoe circuit right at the bottom of the chimney off to the left. Well, there wasn't 2 line arrows there at the time, and he swam further in about another 100 feet as the back-to-back markers, or the 2 line markers signifying parallel lines and beanie tunnel. Well, what a lot of people don't talk about is on the left side of the cave and up higher is another tunnel. It used to be called the Squirrel Passage. Some instructor out of Missouri nicknamed it the Lost Student Tunnel after this incident. And anyway, moral of the story is they went to the wrong jump. He wasn't familiar with the cave. I mean, that's instructor 101. You never take your students somewhere you haven't been. And when you first go in, it's fairly good size. And then once you go in a ways, it makes a 90-degree turn. Now it's paralleling the main line. And it gets small fairly quickly. So 10, 15 feet in, it goes down to a very small restriction. Now the 2 students were both on back-mounted doubles. The instructor, who was a really good-sized boy, was also in doubles. So he's got a really large body profile plus the doubles on top of that. When he was briefing his students, he said, it comes around through a restriction and you're up in the cavern. If we don't like the restriction, we can just swim out the cavern. Well, they went to the wrong jump. So when these students got to the restriction, they just thought that they had to go through. And at that time, I mean, you've seen the flow in Blue Springs. It's ripping, usually. The normal discharge is between 120 and 160 million gallon discharge a day. In 2012, it had been dropping year after year after year. We were in like a 7-year drought. And at the time of the incident, they had just drained the mill pond down 6 feet, and the flow had picked up from the lack of hydraulic pressure, and then it evened out. Well, it was almost zero flow. It was pumping out like 9 million gallons a day. So no flow. And these students are stuck, this first student stuck in the restriction, and he's just kicking and pulling, and it's just stirring shit up. Well, pretty soon that starts affecting not only that jump, but it's just rocks, a couple of rocks separating you from the main passage. So he keeps struggling and struggling and struggling, making more and more of a mess, and he popped through. Then the next student's right behind him, well, I have to go, and now he's stuck, and he's struggling, and it's just getting worse and worse by the minute. By the time he pops through, the instructor gets up there, and there's no way he's going through. And he's reaching through, so he says, trying to grab the students to get them to turn around. They didn't. Well, on his way out, he got stuck turning around as well. And according to the two witnesses that saw him leaving, they said he was in a full-out panic for the surface. And he just swam right up and out. And we were just finishing our briefing at the table. We were still in street clothes. Tanks were still in the truck, regs and reg bags. And one of the kids that worked for me at the time, in fact, he's the model on our shirts, Jay Phelps, he was still in high school. And he was getting ready for his apprentice class. And he came along just to shadow the class for extra dive time. And I'm finishing the briefing, and all of a sudden I hear, "Help, help, help." And I look towards the water, and I see him screaming bloody murder, "Help, help, help." So I start running down there. I recognize the guy. I know he's the instructor. I knew he had 2 students with him. And I see him from about here up, and I don't see the students at all. So I'm running for the water, and I yelled to Jay, "Call 911. And I'm pitching phone and keys and stuff out of my pockets because I figure I'm gonna have to jump in the water and maybe do, mouth to mouth, whatever for these students. And as I get closer, I see he's alone. And I yelled, his name was Ed as well. I said, "Ed, where are your students?" He said, "Oh God, they're dead." And I just stopped in shock. And I turned around to Jay and I said, "Jay," I said, "call 911, tell them we have 2 lost divers and the body recovery diver is on scene." And so I start running back and I said, "Jay, get my stuff together now." So he starts putting my regs on my tanks and taking them to the water. I start getting my dry suit on. And I run down to the water, and the sheriff's department's not there yet. And I jump in the water, and he's still standing there about waist deep, and he's crying and blubbering, and just not making any sense. And I'm putting stuff on as fast as I can. I said, "Ed, where are your students?" "Oh God, they're gonna die. Don't let them die." I said, "Why, are they dead or are they gonna die?" "Don't let them die." I said, "Where are they?" "I don't know, I don't know." And by this time I finished putting my stuff on, and I grabbed him, I just started shaking him. And I said, "Ed, where are your blanking students?" And he's like, "I don't know, there's a jump." I said, "Okay, done," and I took off. So I go in and I'm just grabbing rocks and I'm kicking for all I'm worth, and I'm going as fast as I can. Now the cavern was about, and usually it's air clear, the cavern was probably 30, 40 foot visibility. And as I started dropping down the chimney, it just got worse and worse. By the time I hit the bottom, I could only see about 10 feet. By the time I got to the jump line, I almost ran into the jump line. It ran so poorly. Instead of running it down to a rock and then up to the jump in the ceiling, they ran it right across where if anybody was scootering out, it would have just clotheslined them. So I just about run into this line, and I'm like, okay, up here. So I get there where the reel's tied off, and I'm on line now. It's 3-4 inches of viz. And I start in, and the further I go, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so I know the tunnel quite well. I know how big it is. So I'm having to pull the line out, and I have to do all my searching by feel because I can't see anything. And every few minutes I would just stop and listen, because if I'm close to them and they're still alive, I can hear them breathing. Plus sometimes people will get stuck or something and they'll tap on their tank or, you know, make noises of some kind. I don't hear anything. I keep going. I go, and then it gets to this vertical fissure. Well, it's not vertical. It's kind of at about a 50-degree angle. So I'm in that, and of course I got to search the bottom and I got to search the top. And I'd see when I got to we're up by the top of the ceiling, I could see a little bit, which is kind of handy because usually when victims run out of gas, they float. So if they're floating on the ceiling, I'm going to see them. So I just keep searching, searching, searching. Then I get to the end of the line, and I haven't found them. And now where that pops out is behind a spot called Chicken Head Rock, and it's a big sloping mud and rock pile. And there's a line that goes up into a really nasty tunnel up in the ceiling. And I'm just hoping they didn't accidentally find that line and go up there. So I just hooked my safety reel on and I started doing a search pattern. And then I'd be going this way, and of course I can't see, so I'd run into that mud pile, and you know, then I'd start going the other way, and then I'd go this way till I ran into the mud pile. And I'm trying to search as much as I can, but it's fairly, you know, it's like this, so it's from almost nothing tall to quite tall. And then all of a sudden, I'm a ways away from the jump, and I started hearing what sounded like whale sounds. I heard this, and I'm like, okay, well, at least one of them's still alive. And of course, as we know, sound is omnidirectional, so you can't tell, oh, it's coming from that way. So I just kept searching, and then I noticed it was getting quieter. So I turned around and I started reeling up and searching the other direction. And then all of a sudden I ran into him face to face. And I just remember right as my head was actually, it looked like we were kissing. My head hit his head, and I just saw hands come up. And I think we talked about it another time, how a lot of the things I teach in my cave class are different. And one of them is air shares, because when you just hand off a rig to a panic diver, they're probably going to kill you. So I always grab them by the arm, and when we hit, and I saw out of my peripheral and near zero vis, these hands come up, and I whipped over to the side, and I got this regulator out. And then I saw he was still breathing, and I'm trying to check his gauge. I can't read it. And finally I got down there, and I'm like, okay, he's got gas. He had about 1,500 PSI left. So I grabbed him, and I started getting him out. Now I know I don't want to take him back the way he came, but I know that the gold line's over there somewhere. And so I just started taking him out that way on reel. And then when I found the gold line, I told him, you stay right here. And he's like, I'm out of here. He wanted out so bad. And I said, no. And I squeezed his hand. When he first grabbed the line, he grabbed it with both hands. And he was doing the sign of the cross. He was really glad he was alive. And I said, wait right here. And I'm trying to pull my regulator out and talk to him. And I said, where's your buddy? I don't know. And so I said, wait right here. So I squeezed his hands on the line, and I went back in looking for his buddy. I found his buddy, and he was just sitting in the mud. Very calm, like nothing, you know, like taking a break, union break time or something. And I grabbed him, checked, he had more gas than the other guy did. So we start working our way back to the line. I get them both back there. Now I put him behind the first victim, because the first victim's still near panic. And he was pretty calm. So I get them both out, and now they've been in there a while. And there was, as soon as I go in, I always tell whoever's on the top side that the cave's closed. I don't want anybody else in the cave. So the cave was closed, and there was 2 or 3 or 4 oxygen bottles in the cavern from other divers that were now locked out of the cave. So these guys did not have oxygen bottles. So I went and grabbed 2 oxygen bottles and got them on deco. And the one guy, he wanted out so bad, he just kept trying to get out. I mean, we're right in front of the opening. And so I parked myself right in front of him, head to head. And I said, stop. And I grabbed his hands and I said, I've got you, you're okay. And at that moment, we were so close to the entrance, we had some light and we had more visibility. It was still pretty hazy. But then he realized that I'm not his instructor. And he pulled his regulator out of his mouth and he went, where's my instructor? So I grabbed my wet notes out of my pocket and I wrote him a note and I said, Ed's out, he's okay. He sent me in to find you. Good to see you. And I handed it to him and he yanked it out of my hands and he wrote, you have no effing idea on the bottom. In fact, I kept that for years until it basically wore, the pencil wore away on the waterproof paper. But so I decompressed them longer than we probably needed to, just to be safe. And then when we got them out, of course, the sheriff's department, they had like 10 units there. They had body bags stretched out because they assumed that they were deceased. And they had stretchers and body bags. And so there was quite a big crowd of people by that time. And everybody was cheering that they were alive. And then EMS took them over, looked them over, recommended they go to the hospital. They both refused service. And EMS was packing up to leave. One of the sheriff's deputies grabbed one of them and said, I need to get a incident statement from you. So they pulled him aside, and he was the one I found first. He was the one that was panicking and making all the noise. So Stacy had been, well, the instructor, he was so distraught and so he was still blubbering by when I went in that he just kept screaming, they're gonna die, oh God, they're dead, oh, they're gonna die, oh God, they're dead. And Stacy walked into the water with her street clothes on and was hugging him and saying, it's okay, settle down, you know, Ed's in there. If anybody can find him, he will. And so she was comforting him the whole time. When we brought him out and the sheriff's getting the incident statement from this first victim, he was still not a happy camper at all. And so Stacy was sitting there with him, and she had her arm around him, patting his back, and she's like, you're good now, you're good now. Just talk to the officer. So he's writing the statement, and he said, what happened? Now, this guy doesn't know anything about cave diving. He's just a sheriff's deputy. And so he's describing the incident. We got stuck, we did this, blah, blah. And he said when the line ended, he felt, you know, as you know, we're trained to come up and look for the other end of the line. Well, there was no other end of the line. That's where it ended. So he's sitting there trying to feel around, what do I do? And he's this far from that last restriction. And about that time, his buddy comes through and runs into him. So now he's tossed off the line in zero viz, and he's sitting there, oh geez, there was just a line here a second ago. And so the other guy is now doing the same thing. He's looking for the end of the line, or the other end of the line. And then somehow he gets off the line. I don't know if they did it to him, they didn't know. So they're offline, and now they're lost line. And as you know, we trained for this. It's called a lost line drill. So he's telling the deputy, so I knew how to do this. So I reached in, I grabbed my safety spool, And I started feeling around. I found a rock, and I went to tie off. He said, but I was so scared I dropped the reel. And of course it's on an angle, so it rolled away. And he's sitting there going like this, trying to find it. Well, when you're scooping up mud and rocks, a little line about this big isn't gonna, you're not even gonna notice it. And so the sheriff's like, okay, then what did you do? He goes, well, I carry a backup. So I had another safety spool, so I got it out. He's like, okay, then what happened? He goes, yeah, I dropped that one too. And
I hate to laugh, but it is kind of comical.
And he said, the sheriff's like, okay, then what did you do? He goes, well, then I knew I was going to die. And the sheriff's like, pardon me? He goes, well, then I knew I was going to die because I don't have any reels and I can't find the line. And he goes, so at this point, I just want to write my wife a note saying that I love her and the kids. And he's like, okay, then what happened? Well, I dropped my wet notes and I couldn't see to write anyway. And he's like, okay, then what happened? Well, then the black and chrome angel appeared and took me to safety. And apparently, when I hit him head to head, he saw a black hood, black mask, and 2 chrome first stages on my side mount bottles. So that's when I became the black and chrome angel.
The black and chrome angel.
So they finished that incident report, and then they start doing the other guys. He was the one that was calm. And he gets to the point where he gets his safety spool out. Okay, then what happened? He goes, I dropped it, and it rolled away. So now he said, okay, then what happened? He goes, well, then I just sat down and waited for Ed to come and get me. I figured he'd yell at me, and because he was talking about Ed, his instructor. The deputy didn't know his instructor's name was Ed. He thought he was talking about me. Like, I had a problem, I'll just sit here and wait for Ed to come rescue me. And the sheriff's deputy was like, that's a pretty bold move. and he's like, well, I figured he'd yell at me, but then we'd do it again tomorrow. He's like, all right. So anyway, that was the story of the 2 students.
Hey everyone! Thanks for watching our latest episode all the way to the end. Hit that subscribe button now so you won't miss our next episode.